Right, today there is a lecture on the retina, basically the structure of the retina, right? And as you know already, almost everyone knows that retina is the light sensitive part of the eye, and this is a very thin delicate membrane which is present inside the eyeball. So let me explain exactly where it is in the eyeball. I will draw the basic structure of the eyeball and I will put retina exactly where it is present. Let's suppose here is, yes, you will tell me the structure. What is it? Yes, here it is cornea, very good. And here it is sclera, and here it is, yes, iris. Now, this layer, yes, this is what? Tell me. Sclera, right? This is the outermost layer of the eyeball, which is collagenous and very tough membrane, protective layer. Inside it, this is a layer which is highly vascular, and this vascular layer is called in posterior part up to here choroid, and then here this part of this vascular layer, this is called ciliary body, and here it is, yes, iris. Again, this is iris, and here it is, yes, ciliary body, right? And here is choroid. Now look, I will remove this black from here, and up to now I have made basically two layers, right? Outermost protective layer which consists of sclera, and in the front cornea, and then this is the middle layer which is uveal tract, all of it, right? Uveal tract is the vascular layer in the eyeball. It consists of posteriorly choroid, this is all choroid, this is ciliary body here, and this is iris. Is that right? Now, inside it, there is retina, right? Inside there is retina. Let me draw the structure of retina. Basically, yes, retina has two parts. One is the pigmented epithelium, right? This is the pigmented epithelium. We call it retinal pigmented epithelium, right? And more inner to this pigmented epithelium, more inner, because as you move this side, this is the inside of the eyeball. If you move in this direction, you are moving outside. So inner to this pigmented epithelium, right, there is another very important layer of the retina, and this layer of the retina is called neuronal layer of the retina. What it is called? Yes, neuronal layer of the retina, right? So here we see basically that this is the outer layer of the retina, which is epithelial layer, pigment epithelial layer, and here it is which layer? Neuronal layer of the retina, right? Am I clear? And inside it there is another structure, but before that I will love to put here, yes, what is it? Lens and its zonular ligaments, right? And inside here there is another structure, and this structure is called vitreous body. What is it? Vitreous body. Now this structure, vitreous body, is just filling this area, right? We can see retina is basically sandwiched between vitreous body inside and choroid outside, right? So what we can say that retina, this is the actually, now I must say this is the retina. It's pigment layer and neuronal layer, right? Here also I will make retina like this. It's pigment layer and this is neuronal layer, right? Now you see retina is sandwiched between internally vitreous and externally choroid. Is that right? This is the exact location of the retina inside the eyeball. Is that right? Any question up to this? Now, if you move the retina, as you move on the retina anteriorly, right, light sensitive part of the retina abruptly terminate at a point here which is called Oraserrata. Now let me tell you what is Oraserrata and where it is located. This is corneo-scleral junction. What is this? Corneo-scleral junction, and this is the equator, right? Now between them, almost halfway between equator and corneo-scleral junction, this is the point where retina, if you follow it forward, abruptly its light sensitive part terminates. Am I clear? Yes. That retina is starting from here, from the posterior part. As you move anteriorly in the eyeball, right, it terminates, its light sensitive part of the retina terminates abruptly at Oraserrata. Now what is Oraserrata? Oraserrata is basically located, it's a wavy, or you can say interior edge of the retina which is having multiple pointed edges. Let me show you exactly how it is. Okay. This is the anterior-most part of the retina, because retina is from all sides, and this is the edges of the retina anteriorly. If I put it like this is retina posterior part, right, and interiorly at this point, right, it terminates as wavy margin. You get it? This is the front and this is the back, and here is the retina. And this is the, for example, if it is my right eye, let me show you. Let's suppose this is my right eye, this is the retina. Now, this retina, this edge, you know, these are pointed edges, and also pointed edges on other side. You can say retina is like this. Is that right? This is the posterior part of retina, and as you're moving forward, its interior side is not smooth like this. It is having finger-like projections. These projections, these are called Oraserrata. What are these called? Oraserrata, right? Now, again I will repeat it. What is retina? Retina is a very delicate membrane which is present within the eyeball. It is the innermost layer. Usually we say eyeball is made of 3 concentric layers. The outermost layer is cornea and sclera, right? Middle layer is here uveal tract or vascular layer or choroid, ciliary body and iris, and innermost layer is retina. Is that right? Of course, retina has 2 parts. There is retinal pigment epithelium and neural part. Am I clear? And retina itself is sandwiched. It is having outside choroid and inside vitreous. That is why that when we are talking about the outer part of the retina, we also say choroidal surface of the retina. And when we are talking about inner aspect of the retina, we talk about the vitreal aspect of the retina. Vitreal because it's vitreous body. And when you follow retina from back of the eyeball anteriorly, right, it abruptly, it's light sensitive part of retina. It means the light sensitive part of the retina, it means that part of the retina which is having rods and cones. That part of the retina which is having photoreceptors. This part of the retina abruptly ends as a wavy margin which is called Oraserrata, which is located midway between the corneo-scleral junction and equator of the eyeball. Am I clear? Any question up to this? Right. Now, another thing, that if you look inside the eyeball, let's suppose that if ophthalmologist through a lens, through, what is this? Ophthalmoscope. Through the ophthalmoscope, if an ophthalmologist looks inside the eyeball, right? He's looking inside the eyeball, right? Of course, he is looking through the cornea, aqueous humor through anterior chamber and posterior chamber and lens. Then he is passing through, is looking through. What is this? Vitreous body, and then he will look at the cornea, retina. But he cannot see the all retina. He is just seeing the posterior part of the retina, which is present around this part, and this part of retina is called, yes. No, this is from where the optic nerve is going, and this is called optic disc. This is optic, this is optic disc, right? So when you are looking through that, you see the part of the retina which is around the optic disc, and the part which can be seen here, this is called fundus, ocular fundus. Is that right? What is this part called? This is when through an ophthalmoscope you look into the eyeball, right? You are able to visualize the posterior part of the retina and structures around it. So this part of the retina, which is visible to the ophthalmoscope, we call it ocular fundus. Am I clear? Any question to this? Before, repeatedly I said that this retina terminates what? At Oraserrata. But actually, there is another part of a retinal epithelium anteriorly, pigment epithelium anteriorly continues as epithelial layer on ciliary body and posterior part of the iris. Retina, light sensitive part of the retina terminates at Oraserrata, and there pigment epithelium continues anteriorly as the epithelial layer of inner epithelial layer of ciliary body and posterior epithelial layer of iris. Here the same thing also, that even though this here light sensitive part of retina terminates, but here retinal epithelium, which epithelium? Retinal pigment epithelium continues anteriorly with epithelial lining of inner epithelial, what is this? Epithelial lining of ciliary body and iris. And not only pigment layer, even neuronal layer as a very thin layer continues over it. But of course, this part of this epithelial layers, right, they don't have rods and cones. Am I clear? Now, some authors, they mention that retina continues anteriorly. At Oraserrata, light sensitive part terminate, but its pigment epithelium and some component of neural epithelium, both of them continues anteriorly as double epithelium. There are two epithelial layers. Double epithelium related with the ciliary body and on the back of iris. Any question up to this? There's no. Now we go back to the fundus. Yes, what is your question?
So what is the function of this layer which continues?
Oh, he has a question. Why this layer is continuing there? That is your question. Right. Have you studied the embryology of the eyeball? It has something to do with that. Embryological origin of the retina. Anyone knows? Embryological origin of retina. Okay, I will go now explain that. But remind me, I have to explain you to the fundus oculi. Let's go back. That why these two layers are moving forward. Right? Let's talk about the development of the retina. How it develops. As you know that during the development of central nervous system, first of all, ectodermal thickness is there, which is basically neural plate. You know that? During embryological development, ectodermal thickness is made as a neural plate, then it edges are raised and it becomes neural fold or groove, and eventually they fuse together and they convert into neural tube. Is that right? All of you know that? Now, actually, from this neural tube, eventually central nervous system develops. And retina is part of the central nervous system. Retina is the part of central nervous. Retina is the only part of central nervous system which you can look through ophthalmoscope. Retina is the only part of the central nervous system you can look through ophthalmoscope. It means retina is driving from neural tube. Now let me tell you exactly how. Let's suppose this is your neural tube, right? This is phallic end and this is caudal end. Upper end of the neural tube and lower. During the development of central nervous system, first of all, 3 bulges developed here. Right? Now, this is called, these 3 bulges, ballooning. I will explain it very briefly. These 3 balloons, these are called, yes, forebrain vesicle, midbrain vesicle, hindbrain vesicle. Or we call it, yes, prosencephalon, cephalon, mesencephalon, and rhombencephalon. All of you know that? Now, out of this is your, what is this? Prosencephalon. Prosencephalon with further development divide into 2 parts. And here is now your mesencephalon. And what is this? Rhombencephalon. And here is remaining neural tube. Right? Now look at it. This prosencephalon, it divided into 2 vesicles. This vesicle is called telencephalon, and this part of vesicle, this is called diencephalon. Right? It means prosencephalon, right? It divides into 2 secondary swellings. This is telencephalon and this is diencephalon. Am I clear? How to remember this is Dian and that is telen? Just remember Lady Diana is here. Just remember Lady Diana is here. And from here the telescopes are there. Always looking at Lady Diana. You know? So diencephalon is in and telencephalon is around. Am I clear? Now, from the telencephalon, not from the telencephalon, from the diencephalon, beautiful retina comes. It must come from Diana. Right? You know, she was one of the most beautiful lady. Right? So, from here, special outpouchings come. From where? From diencephalon. These outpouching which are coming out, this tissue which is coming out, of course this is central nervous system tissue. This is called optic vesicle. What is it called? Optic vesicle. Right? Now, as it moves anteriorly, right? For example, here is diencephalon, it is moving anteriorly like this. When it is moving anteriorly, here it develops an invagination. Of course, telencephalon is here. Now, as it is moving anteriorly, it develops an invagination. And it also develops, this is the other, what is this? Invagination. When this invagination develops, we say optic vesicle has developed an optic cup. What is it?
Optic cup.
Yes, optic cup. Is that right? Now you see optic cup has how many layers? One inner layer and one outer layer. As time passes by, this optic cup, as it grows, right, it does many things, but I will only explain related with the retina. Right? This is the optic cup. Am I clear? Now, actually, outer layer of the optic cup, yes, it differentiates into pigment layer of retina. Am I clear? Outer layer of the optic cup differentiate into pigment epithelium of the retina. An inner layer differentiates into, what is this? Neuronal layer. Am I clear? Right? In this way, retina is derived. Now listen carefully. Retina is derived from where? From the optic cup. which was developed from optic vesicle, which was coming from diencephalon. Is that right? And this optic cup was having double layer. Outer layer differentiated into pigment epithelium of retina, and inner layer differentiated into neuronal layer with right neuronal layer. Am I clear? Now, in this neuronal layer, I will draw it further bigger. This is optic stalk, and here was your optic cup. Here it was. Now you will tell me, this outer layer was which? Pigment epithelium, right? And yes, this was pigment epithelium. And what is this layer? Rod and cone neuronal layer. This neuronal layer, rod and cone terminate here. And here also rod and cone terminate here. This is then, this point become optic disc, right? Okay. Now this is neuronal layer. But actually, outside it, the structures which are developing around this, you know, here is what? Choroid. And what is here? Ciliary body. And what is here? Ciliary body. And what is developing here? Choroid. And of course, here is development of what? Sclera. Is that right? This is developing, and cornea here. Now, you can see that, and here is of course what? Your iris. This layer continues up to here, and this also continues up to here. Am I clear? And in the inner layer, they have rod and cone up to this area, but at Oraserrata, ahead to it, there are no rod and cones, only little sporting tissue continues on it, and then they fuses here. You understand? They will fuse. This is the point, this point. So this point is at pupil actually. This is at the margin of pupil. And then this double layer is behind on the ciliary body. Behind it, rods and cones are added, and then become the visual part of the retina. So some authorities believe that they say there is non-visual part of the retina and visual part of the retina. Visual part of the retina is continuing up to Oraserrata, and non-visual part of the retina continues as double epithelium on the ciliary body and behind it. Other authorities say up to the Oraserrata is retina, true retina. Right? They only say retina is up to the Oraserrata, and beyond that they say retinal, which epithelium? Pigment epithelium, and neuronal layer cells convert into epithelial cells, and this double layer continues over ciliary body to in the inner respect of ciliary body and on the back of the right, and this opening here is your pupil. Now you got them?
Yes.
Clear? Yes. Okay, good. So now we move forward. Let's go back to the fundus oculi or ocular. Fundus. What was ocular fundus? That through a ophthalmoscope, when you look inside the eyeball, you look inside optic disc and part of a retina around that, and we call it ocular fundus. What do you really see there? Right? Let me explain. Let's suppose here is your beautiful nose. Right? You have one eye here and one eye here. Clear? Now, I will make fundus here and fundus here. Of course, this is right eye fundus and this is left eye fundus. Is that right? Now, let me draw the fundus here when you are looking at it. Now, this is not the cornea, it is the fundus. And of course, there must be fundus here. Is that right? Why I am trying to draw true? Because I want to tell you one thing, that when you look at it, when you look at the fundus, at the posterior pole of the eyeball, you find a slight yellowish area. You find a slight yellowish area here, and you also find here slight yellowish area. Is that right? And This is the posterior pole of the fundus, right? And little nasally on the medial side of it, about 3 millimeter medial side of it, slightly superiorly, here is optic disc. And here is also optic disc. So what I want to tell you, that when you look at through the fundus, right, you look at two landmarks. Number one, on the back of the fundus, right, slightly nasally, you find optic disc, and slightly lateral to the infralateral to the optic disc, you find a yellowish area. Remember, optic disc is pale. It is pale color, light colored, but this area is yellow color. This yellow area, this is called macula lutea. What is it called? Macula lutea, right? This macula lutea, this is not having sharp margins. This macula lutea does not have sharp margins, right? Okay, I will make it here too. The center of the macula lutea is a slightly depressed area. The center of macula lutea, let's suppose macula lutea is this, and here macula lutea is here. This is the center of macula lutea. Now, this yellow area, which is the center, it's a slightly depressed area. This is the area for sharpest vision. This is the area for sharpest vision. Again, I will repeat. In the macular area, we simply call it macula also. We also call it central retina, because other part is peripheral retina. Central retina or macula, right, it's a slightly yellowish area, right? It is 5 to 6 centimeter. Within its center, there is a slightly depression. And this slight depression within the macula lutea, this point is called fovea centralis. What is it called? Fovea centralis. Is that right? So I will now draw these two in a larger way. I will draw just one eye, and you will tell me I'm drawing the right or left. Suppose this is the fundus. Here it is fundus, and here is optic disc, and here is macula lutea, and within the macula lutea there is central area, right? And this central area is it's almost the size of the disc, right? And this central depression is called fovea centralis. What is it called? Fovea centralis. This is which eye, right or left? Right. But if I draw like this, if disc is on this side and macula is on that side, then it is left eye. Now, when you look through the ophthalmoscope, these two structures you should be able to identify: optic disc and macula lutea. What is the best way to differentiate them? Anyone?
Color.
Okay, he says one of the ways to look at the color, this is pale colored and this is yellowish color. This is one. But in disease condition, sometimes your color changes. What else? Position, okay. That nasally it is optic disc, and slightly central, but laterally to the optic disc there is macula lutea with central depression, which is called fovea centralis. Good. Should I tell you the best way to differentiate? Just look at it and you know. This is vascular. You see the big vessels coming out and going into it. Retinal artery emerges out of this. And it is avascular. If you find vessels there, inside it, big vessels, probably you're looking at the disc, not at macula. This is the best way to differentiate. When you look at it, right, here are actually through this optic disc, right? What is optic disc? If at this diagram, if I look, I will explain what is exactly optic disc. This is your sclera continuing with the dura mater, right? And here is your Optic nerve, right? This optic nerve is going inside. Here it pierces the sclera through a plate, right, which has multiple holes. This plate has multiple holes through which the bundles of optic nerve fiber are passing. This is called lamina cribrosa. Lamina cribrosa is a part of sclera, right? The point lamina cribrosa is a circular part of the sclera which is porous, which is perforated through the bundles of optic nerve fibers. Is that right? So optic nerve, I can draw it like that also, that optic nerve fibers, they are entering through this, they are passing through this. And here is lamina. Am I clear? So this is lamina cribrosa from here up to here, right? Now, as I will explain later, the nerve fibers which are taking information from the retina, they are moving in this direction. From the neuronal retina, I will explain later into detail, these fibers are coming here. When you see from the front, the point through which all the neuronal fibers are moving backward, this point is called, yes, this point is called optic disc. This is optic disc. So what is optic disc? In a way we can say it's head of the optic nerve. Or we can say optic disc is sitting just in front of lamina cribrosa. So optic disc is the point of the retina from where all the optic nerve fibers are moving out of the retina through the moving posteriorly through the lamina cribrosa and moving to the central nervous system as optic nerve. Right? Remember, optic nerve should not be called a nerve actually. This is actually optic tract, but because optic tract is used the term somewhere else. Right? You remember optic nerve goes to the chiasma and from the chiasma there is optic tract. But actually, what is the meaning of tract? In the central nervous system we study ascending tract, descending tracts. What are ascending tracts and descending tracts? These are the bundle of white matter within the central nervous system. Is that right? In the same way, these are also bundles of axon, but they are not peripheral nerve. Optic nerve fibers are basically bundle of fibers within the central nervous system. That is why they should be considered a tract of diencephalon. Am I clear? But initially anatomist called it optic nerve. So conventionally we still call it optic nerve, but it is truly not a nerve because peripheral nerves fibers are myelinated by Schwann cells. These are not myelinated by Schwann cells. And central nervous system tracts are myelinated by oligodendrocytes. These fibers are also myelinated by the oligodendrocytes. Then, those diseases which exclusively involve the peripheral nerves usually do not involve optic nerve. And those diseases like multiple sclerosis which exclusively involve the central white matter, they do involve optic nerve. Is that right? Even though now onward in the lecture we will continue saying that this is a nerve, optic nerve, to respect the anatomist who put the name, but actually this should be considered a central nervous system tract. Am I clear to everyone? So you know optic disc is the head of the optic nerve. So from here when you're looking at it, you're looking at optic disc. Actually you're looking at the point from where retinal fibers are leaving through the lamina cribrosa and going to the central nervous system. Is that right? But actually here the retinal artery is also coming. From where? Retinal artery, suppose this is ophthalmic, I will draw it more clearly here. This is ophthalmic artery, let's suppose, right? And this is retinal artery, central retinal artery. It pierces the dura mater of the optic nerve. It enters inside. Here this artery, central retinal artery enters into what? What is this? Optic nerve, and then it passes through the lamina cribrosa, and then it emerges at, yes, optic disc, and here it divides into one superior branch and one inferior branch, right? Later on I will tell you what is happening to these branches, but what I'm trying to say, that central retinal artery exit through the optic disc. So when you are in the fundus, when you're looking at the optic disc, you will find, what is this artery going upward? Branches of central retinal artery, superior branch and inferior branch, right? And then they divide into nasal branch and temporal branch. Here also divide into nasal branch and inferior nasal and inferior temporal, superior nasal and superior temporal, right? And this central retinal artery gives the blood supply to the inner retina. Why I say inner retina? Come back to this diagram. This part of retina is outer. You know, this is outer part of retina. This. And this side is inner retina. Now, central retinal artery branches go here, and from here they are giving branches to the neural tissue of the retina. Which layer of the retina? Neural tissue of the retina. And they are supplying the blood to the inner part of the retina. Am I clear? Yes. And outer part of the retina, it is receiving blood from choriocapillaries. Remember one thing, outer part of the retina, right, it receives nutrition from choriocapillaries. These capillaries here, right, these are derived from posterior ciliary arteries. This is posterior ciliary arteries, and here also posterior ciliary artery, which goes into choroid, and they make choriocapillaries here. Through these capillaries, actually these are not true capillaries, these are sinusoids. Anyway, through this sinusoid, nutrients pass through, what is this? Pigment epithelium, and give nutritional supply to outer part of retina. Remember, don't get confused. Many students get confused which is the inner and which is outer. Outer part of the retina is which is towards the sclera. Inner part of the retina which is towards the vitreous. Is that right? So this is which part of the retina? This one. Outer. And what is this? Inner. Outer part of retina is supplied nutrition and metabolic support from choriocapillaries. Capillaries from the choroid, but these capillaries do not cross the pigment layer. So simply oxygen or glucose or other nutrients, they diffuse through the pigment layer and supply the outer part of retina. Am I clear? Yes. But this part of retina, what is this part of retina? Inner part of the retina, it is supplied by branches of central retinal artery, and here the capillary network is present within the retina. So capillary network is present within the inner retina, but capillary network is not present within the outer retina, but retinal blood support is double from outside choriocapillaries and from inside central retinal artery. Yes. Am I clear? Yes. Any question up to this? Okay, we'll go into detail later about these blood supply. Now, let's come back. So, this is the optic disc, and from here this artery was entering. What was this artery? Name it. Central retinal artery. So, what is coming out from here? Central retinal artery. Now, as I told you, this is macula lutea and this is fovea centralis. This is the point of the maximum visual acuity. This is the point where there are cones. I will explain later. Cones are very, very sensitive to the color, right? But they only get stimulated when there is more light. That is why in day vision you can see the colors. If we put the lights off this room, maybe you can see the shapes of each other, but you cannot tell the color of the dress or detailed structures. Is that right? Actually, in the fovea, there is high concentration of cones. Fovea is the highest concentration of cones, and this area is very, very you can say having sharpest acuity. Acuity means it can see the structures with detail, and it also sees the structure with the colors, right? The only problem is it needs high threshold of light. Am I clear? Now, this area only depends on choriocapillary diffusion. It does not get the blood supply from retinal side. So, when you look from the ophthalmoscope, will you see the big blood vessels here? Actually, you don't see any blood vessels here. You don't see. So this area is actually avascular, without vessel. So if someone asks you, what is the best, easiest way to just look in the ophthalmoscope and tell where is the optic disc and where is the macula lutea, right? Simplest. If it is having big vessels there, it is optic disc, and if it is looking yellowish and without vessels, this is macula lutea. And in the center, now look, you know, I would love to differentiate again them. Slightly nasally, there is a pale structure. Pale structure is optic disc, and more central but lateral to the disc, there is yellowish area, macula lutea. So this is yellowish, that is pale. There is a depression in it, and that depression is called fovea centralis. There is a depression here also, but this depression is called physiological cup. Because in some diseases like glaucoma, when intraocular pressure is very high, this is pushed backward. I mean, if there's intraocular pressure is very high, this is pushed backward because lamina cribrosa is a weak point. And secondly, many neurons of this area degenerate when there's very high pressure. And this slight cupping, now I will mention, this is a slight cup. You see, there's a little depression or excavation. This is called physiological cupping. Why we call it physiological cupping? Because in some diseases, it becomes pathologically cupped, deep cupping. So we can say optic disc has a slight excavation or depression, which is called physiological cup. Here is also in the center of it, there is a slight depression, which is called fovea centralis. Is that right? Another thing, here there is no rods and cones. It means this area is not sensitive to the light. So we call it blind spot. Within the retina, this point is blind because there are no rod and cone in this area, only nerve fibers are coming. You are getting it? Rod and cones are present here, right? So, but this area is blind spot, but you come here. What happens here? In fovea centralis, cones are packed very tightly, and there are no blood vessels here. Even we'll see later, there are about, histologically, if you look at the section of the retina, it has 10 layers. Many layers in fovea centralis are pulled aside so that light can go directly and hit the cones. So this is thinnest area of the retina, right? Light can go directly there, is that right? As innermost part of the, you can say, retinal components, neuronal component are pulled aside, is that right? So it has the sharpest acuity. So blind, totally blind, and sharpest acuity. Now, who will tell me the differences between these? Tell me 5 differences. Okay, first I will tell. Optic disc is nasally. Macula lutea is? Yes. Central, but infralateral to the optic disc. This is about 1.5 millimeter optic disc, and macula is about 5 to 6 millimeters, larger area. Is that right? Then optic disc is pale. This is yellowish. But the biggest point, it shows big vessels coming in and out, because not only retinal arteries are there, even retinal veins are also draining through this area. You are getting it? But this is avascular. So this is nasally, this is centrally. This is blind spot, this is sharpest occlusion, especially at fovea centralis. This is smaller, 1.5 millimeter diameter. It is basically larger, 5 to 6 millimeter. Depression in it called physiological cupping. Here it is called fovea centralis. Is that right? Any more difference? Here margins are sharp. Here margins are very diffuse. Right? This is called, sharp margins are called optic disc margin with physiological cup, having blood vessels coming out and in. Is it clear? Any question after this? Yes.
From which blood vessel these fovea centralis take the nutrients?
Yeah, this is very important. He says, fovea centralis take nutrients from which blood vessels? I will go back to this diagram. Right? Actually, fovea centralis, let me draw a diagram here. Right? Okay. Let's suppose this is the right side and this is the nose. This is your nose. And there's another eyeball here. I will draw two eyeballs so that your concept become a little more clear. This is one eyeball and this is the other eyeball. Here is your beautiful nose. Right? Of course, this is the right one and that is the left one. Right? Here is the optic nerve going and here is the optic nerve going. You remember optic nerve go together and make optic chiasma here. They fuse with each other here and then optic chiasma and divide it into optic tract. Is that right? But when you look at the light, it is going in a straight. This is the point where it is posterior pole. Right? Now, here is a little macula lutea with little depression. This is the little depression which is macula lutea. Here is also a little depression with this is macula lutea and here is macula lutea. And here is, yes, there is another depression here and this is optic disc and here is a depression too and this is called optic disc and this is lamina cerebrosa. Any question up to this? Now you see in both eyes as at its posterior pole you have macula lutea with central depression fovea centralis and little more nasally and superiorly you have optic disc. Am I clear? Now look at it. Here the blood vessel enter here and what is this blood vessel? Central retinal. This will give branches. Is that right? Here also it will enter and give the branches. This is one source of. Secondly, here there was which vessel was coming?
Posterior ciliary.
Posterior ciliary arteries and what are these making? Choriocapillaries. Here also posterior ciliary and what is this making? Choriocapillaries. Now look, where retina is thick, there inner part of the retina is supplied by central retinal artery and outer part is supplied by diffusion of choriocapillaries. Is that right? These are choriocapillaries. But where there is, what is this? Fovea centralis or macular area. Retinal vessel don't pass into it. Retinal vessel don't pass into it. But choriocapillaries give nutrition from outside through the pigment layer of the retina. You get it? Now you come here. When these arteries come out, they arc in a way that they don't penetrate through the fovea centralis or macular area. They move either upward around it or downward around it. And they give branches to, of course, inner layer of the retinas throughout. But at this point, it is receiving blood supply or nutrition only from choriocapillaries. But other part of the retina is receiving double supply from outside choriocapillary and inside central retinal artery. Am I clear to everyone?
Yes.
Any question here? Done? Plus, some authorities believe there is a special branch here. It gives a little capillaries. I will not talk about that here. Right? So that is why we say that macular area is avascular area. Any question here? So let's have a break here. After the break, we'll continue discussing about the cells and their arrangement in the retina. Retina is made of lot of neuronal cells, photoreceptors, some glial cells. You know, connective tissue cell in central nervous system are glial cells. So retina must have glial cells and of course epithelial cell, like pigment epithelium. So retina has epithelial cell, it has photoreceptors, neuronal cells and also glial cells. What are these cells and how they are arranged? We'll talk after the break.